This is the Xbox One Elite controller. It's a controller I've been holding off getting for a while now, mostly because we've had those rumors going around about how there was a version 2, or I guess the next, really the successor to this controller that was going to add some quality of life features to it. Some of those I'll talk about. And I figured, well, E3 came and went, Gamescom came and went, no announcements there, despite all of this information being out there. So I figure at this point, probably the best way to get them to announce it is for me to buy it. And now they'll probably announce it at XO, which is in like 2 weeks. So there you go. At least this will give us a baseline as to what we can compare the next one to, as I'm sure I'll go and get that one. But today I wanted to take a look at the Xbox One Elite controller, open it up, take a look inside, and just generally go over some of the features and ideas that they implemented here. Because while this is a $150 controller, compared to the competition, I guess you'd say things like Scuf, well, this is actually a pretty good deal, to be honest. So the first thing you notice when you get it, it feels like a premium controller. Like, it actually has some weight to the box and everything, and just kind of opening it the way they have it open, when I put it down here, you actually just pick up the front and it just kind of slides off very slowly. And we have our controller. It comes in like a pouch. So this is like, I guess, a travel case or a travel pouch of some kind. And that's actually what the controller is in. It's stored right in here, and I guess that way you can take it around with you. Relatively easy. It's a nice little case, has a spot up here for some extras, like you probably put your cable and stuff up there, and anything extra that you have with it. And the controller itself, right away, it really does feel like a premium controller, a nice premium handset here. And right away you could probably see some differences with this controller compared to others. It really does look nice, but it has some odd things. Like, for example, this little disc here, where the D-pad is always been weird to me when I see it in pictures, and now I'm actually like using it now, and it still feels weird. I think I'm just one of those old school people who prefer like a straight up D-pad, and it does come with one, which we're gonna go over with some of the features, but I guess this would mostly be for like a rolling D-pad, like if you're playing fighting games, but I guess if you're getting that serious with fighting games, you're probably not using a controller anyway. Definitely not the Xbox One controller. So let's go over some of the, I guess, the features that this thing has. Now, on the back, that's probably one of the most notable ones, is it does have these paddles. And these are basically reprogrammable paddles that will let you press buttons on the front or really anywhere on the controller without actually having to move your fingers or thumbs around. So if you want to do things like, in Halo, back in the day, we would map the jump to the bumpers, so that way we didn't have to actually move our right thumb off of the joystick. And that was called bumper jumper and everything at the time. People probably still use it, to be honest, although the controls have changed a bit in Halo 5. But this would have been amazing back then. Now, they had kits you can buy and wire it up and do all this stuff for you, but to have an actual controller like this would have been pretty cool. Oh, and as for what's inside a $150 controller, well, double A's. Yeah, they still have double A's in this thing. That was actually one of the quality of life features they were going to do, was in the next one, according to leaks and rumors, they were going to have just a built-in battery, like the PS4 controller, like the Nintendo Switch controller, like the PS3 controller, like the Wii U Pro controller. Yeah, Microsoft's always been on this AA kick. I'm not sure why, because this is a premium controller. It's fairly expensive, obviously. I don't really know why AA's are still needed, although it does come with AA's. It's in there. I would hope so. It also has a nice cable and everything. But yeah, AA's, weird. Now back to the overhead view here. I want to also point out these sticks are removable, but they're all metal, which is nice because a lot of times we have obviously plastic sticks, and these, when they rub up against the plastic, like you're actually moving around, they won't have those weird, like they won't start to get kind of ground down and have shavings and stuff all over the place. Now, I do also want to point out, you can buy these sticks separately, which I did order a pair because I was going to put some, as a lot of people have asked for this, this video, to put these on the Nintendo Switch Pro controller. It also works for PS4 controllers and stuff, and the thumbstick is actually not that expensive online. But what's really cool is these come off, and they're all and it's all magnetized, which is really neat. So if you want to put it back on, it'll actually just jump to it, which is really neat. In fact, according to several interviews and different things with people like Major Nelson, it actually will grip better if you actually wiggle it around a little bit. So as it's moving, it actually grips better, which is pretty cool. As of course, as it moves around, it'll start to kind of fall into place better. But it's basically there to line up. The D-pad, same way. So this can come off, and it does come with its own D-pad here, and it will actually just sit right on there like that. Now, here's the thing, I don't like this D-pad because even with this one on, it still kind of slides around. As in, it's still like, will actually kind of, it'll kind of just skate around on top. It still is gripped and everything, but I feel it being kind of loose like this. Not the best D-pad, but I guess people aren't really buying this as much for the D-pad as much as the quality feel and the heavy customization that you can do to this thing. Now, what I mean by customization, well, there's an app you can have on your Xbox One or your PC, and you have profile controls here where you switch between 1 and 2, because you can actually modify like everything. You remap buttons, you can change sensitivity on the triggers, on the buttons, everything. It's really crazy how much customization is to this thing. I mean, take all the sticks off you want. You can start changing them around with, these are longer sticks. I've never understood that, but you can have longer sticks if you want. I think it has more to do with the travel of the stick. You can have domed sticks, which I never understood because I don't like these domed ones much at all, but I guess some people do. More for rolling, I guess. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Even those paddles on the bottom that I showed you, these just come right off. So if you don't want those on there, which, I mean, you bought this, I guess, kind of to have them, but if you don't want them on there, they just kind of come right off. They're also magnetized. They also grip right on, and they sit there. They are hinged as well, but it's all designed for you to be able to move them around and do what you want. You have switches on the back as well. It's just overall, it's just a very cool controller to have if you're really into competitive gaming, I guess, on the system, or you just want a nice controller rather than some of the cheaper offerings they have from not only Microsoft but other places as well. Like third-party ones are pretty junky. If you want one that just feels really good, this is probably it. Now, I really never like taking apart Xbox One controllers. I've taken a couple of them apart in my time when I was doing repairs and stuff. People would always mess up their triggers or they'd mess up their bumpers. The bumpers on these have always been bad. I don't even think these are that great. They made it so that you don't really have to press at one spot. Pretty much the whole bumper counts as a press. Just fine, more for accuracy and everything. I've never liked taking apart these controllers, though. It's just the setup and like to get the bumpers off, you have to kind of get in here and you have to rip these off pretty much. So the first thing you have to do is, yes, you need to actually rip this piece off, and underneath of there it will house screws that you take out. Now, this is set up very similar to how an Xbox One controller standard is. And I mean, technically it's a play on it with the Elite, but right away you can see once I take those off, we have silver screws here and here, and those are all just T8 screws. I really wish they would just go all Phillips, because when you get into this controller, it does become about like Phillips heads and everything. So I do wish that they didn't do that, but well, that's what they're doing. So we'll take these out, and then I believe there should be a T8 underneath the battery where the sticker is, and then we'll get in there. It just comes apart very similar to a regular Xbox One controller. There's really not a lot of difference here. So the screws come off, and the whole plate on the front just kind of lifts off. So that'll just lift off to the side. These are actually replaceable. You can get these fairly easily, and they're not that hard to change out. So you can actually get, I believe, custom ones of these, and you can pretty much take them right off and change them out pretty easily. This has more of a rubberized feel that I kind of like, but I could see it getting worn down since that's generally where your palms will go. Again, this is very easy to do. So if you see a control, or you have a controller where this is all messed up, very easy to change out. So don't throw that controller away. You can actually order those, I believe, on eBay and Amazon and completely make it feel new. You can also order these back plates as well for the grip that come off, and those can be changed. So overall, there's a lot of stuff on the Xbox One controller that's very modular. It's just a little bit of work to do it. So the thumbsticks at this point will come off, and we got to rip them off. Yeah, look at that. Look how large that is. A really good-sized magnet right there that they're using. That's why it jumps to it so quickly. So they have these under. It looks like they have some maybe I think that's Captain tape they're using there. So these are really good. If you check, like, you can see how serious these are for the magnet. This is all metal. Man, it just has a really serious magnet on the bottom to grip that. I do like that it's magnetized though. It does make it feel more quality just overall, and it does add weight to this. So this is already heavy, and that of course adds weight to the controller, which is already heavy. So the thumbsticks themselves, like mechanically, are pretty much the same. Like I guess they're technically fine. For the Microsoft Xbox One controller. Like, it's not that regular one. The thumbsticks are a thumbstick, I guess. It really comes down to what you're putting over it, like this, like the metal. But they're not like anything revolutionary underneath. In fact, once you get down to this level, the entire controller starts looking like just an Xbox controller, like an Xbox One controller. They're really not that different when you get to this point. Overall, but now we can take the back plate off. Okay, so the back is off, and it runs with a ribbon cable, which is fine. It's actually kind of reminds me of that Switch Pro controller a bit, the way that they have the two kind of sandwiched together with a ribbon cable. And on the back, yeah, I mean, it does kind of remind me of what Scuf does with theirs a bit. Yeah, so they just have their own board down here for the different macro switches on the bottom that runs to the board. Then you have actually these switches that do use a straight mechanical switch to interact with the board above it, which is kind of neat. But this is it's a pretty solid board. It's nothing fancy. It kind of, like I said, reminds me a bit just of what Scuf does with their stuff. So it's not insane or anything, but I can see where there is added value compared to the Xbox One controller. This isn't like a half step that they did here. This is like the full on, like they went serious with this. And that's why I think it's so customizable, why they push it that way, because they actually put some time into it. Now, this is the Xbox One Elite base controller here, where you actually get into where the board is. Looks very similar to just the regular Xbox One controller. There's not a lot of differences I'm noticing here when you get to this level. Because at that point we've removed the backing that adds kind of the big value to it with the reprogrammable buttons and everything. But of course the system sees this as an Elite controller, so there is some design and everything on the firmware. One of the things that I really like about the Xbox One controller, and I want to point this out because it's the same for all of them. One, they have kind of these counterweights on them, on the triggers, but they do have, of course, those rumble motors in the trigger. And that's one of the coolest things I think that Microsoft did this gen. And it's a little thing too, where they'll actually make the trigger rumble when you're playing. So if you're like driving, for example, play Forza Horizon, you're driving, you run into something, this would actually start rumbling, the trigger would. And it also works well for accelerating and stuff. They'll do that same thing where the trigger will actually rumble. Very cool idea. And I wanted to see others, maybe like Nintendo or even Sony, get into that. I'd also like to see them, Microsoft anyway, remove these archaic these rumble motors. I just, like, can you imagine with what Nintendo did with their HD rumble? You know, I like those more than this thing. It's just, this is like archaic. This is what we've been using since, like, you know, the PS2, for example, when that got really big with their DualShocks. That's what we've been using, one of these in each handle. It's been like that since then. But if they could switch over to what Nintendo's doing with theirs, and they add them all around it, whether it's in these triggers or even like handheld and everything down by the hands, that would actually be really neat. And they could technically do that in the next system. I don't think they can do it with this system, mostly because all the games are already designed for these motors. But that's something that I would like to see Microsoft do with their Xbox controller. Otherwise, though, the buttons, you can hear them. I mean, they're very, very responsive. The travel's good. These are more tactile. They're not as much membrane when it gets to like the D-pad, because you can hear where that's like more tactile. And this is more membrane. But they're very responsive for being straight membrane buttons. These are still bad. The shoulder buttons on the Xbox controller have never been great. All right, that's actually one of the weakest parts, because the way they use tension on these is down through here in the plastic. And there's no real like spring or anything to hold them up, and eventually that'll wear out, especially in here where the shoulder is. And at that point, it just stops working. People have to rip these out and like replace them a lot. Like if you go online, there's so many tutorials on how to do that, because it always happens. All right, so I guess at this point, we've taken a look around. I'm gonna go ahead and put it back together. You know, something else I'd like to see them fix or change, which was something else that was a part of that update that was kind of a quality of life thing, was the USB, I guess, micro port on the top, or mini port or whatever. They were talking about changing that to USB-C, and that sounds so much better than what they have now, because I just don't like, especially after having it on like the Switch Pro controller, or any accessory now, I mean, phones and everything. It just, these just feel so old now. The micro USB ports, they just feel just archaic at this point. Like you only plug it in one way, and it's just it's annoying. I really liked hearing that they were going to that, but again, we haven't had it announced yet. So the idea of a lithium battery, or just a built-in battery that's rechargeable, you plug in, and the idea of having a USB-C port on the top, that's exciting. Like I do hope that that's announced at XO, even though I bought this one, just because I think this controller would be like just that much better with both of those. That would really put it over the top. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Xbox One Elite controller. It's a pretty cool controller. Is it worth the $150? That's up to you. Depends on how much you game and if you would get a lot of the features and use them a lot. If not, maybe just get the regular controller. But if you like the idea of customizing heavily, maybe you like more premium parts like the metal joysticks, you can technically buy those separately and install them yourself. But if you like the idea of having, I guess, the macro buttons on the bottom with the easy to press buttons, and just the overall premium feel of the controller, it might be worth looking into, especially if you're looking at like the Scuf controllers and others. This actually integrates with the system and it has like the full Xbox One app that lets you customize heavily. Otherwise, it's honestly a regular Xbox One controller with a lot of features packed in, and when you get inside the controller, it does turn into basically a regular Xbox One controller with similar joysticks on like a board level, and overall pretty much everything else. But cool controller nonetheless. Thanks guys for watching. Make sure you give this video a like if you liked it, dislike if not, and I'll see you guys in the next video.